Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining another Sedaru Live webinar. We've got a pretty interesting one today that I'm pretty happy to share with you guys. So thanks for taking the time to join us. As usual, the content, we're going to be looking to keep this right at about 30 minutes. So we'll try to keep it right to the point. For those of you guys that have not used Zoom before, or this is new to you or new webinar, the Zoom controls are pretty straightforward. Different than a normal Zoom meeting, you'll see a button on your controls called Q&A. And that's going to be your way to ask questions as we're going forward. So I really would encourage everybody to ask a lot of questions. This webinar is designed for you to get as much information as quickly as possible, and so the more questions you ask, typically the better these are, and everybody gets a lot out of it. So don't be shy. You'll also notice there's a chat function in there as well too, so you can throw comments in there, but it's not monitored as closely as the Q&A piece there. So for questions, go ahead and certainly throw them in the Q&A section here today. So we're going to be talking about, the idea is thinking about how to use Sedaru tools to improve a work management system that you already have in place, right? And so one of the core tenets of Sedaru is the ability to integrate to a lot of existing systems. And sometimes those are SCADA systems and sensors and meter system and your hydraulic model and some of these other pieces. And then other times you might already have an existing work management or enterprise management system in place, and you can use Sedaru to leverage that. Now, one of the unique things about Sedaru is that it can also function as its own standalone work management system, right? And what we try to do is to be really adaptable to whatever your existing IT environment is, right? So if you've got something that is from a back-end side working really well, and you want to get usage up, or you want to improve the data that's coming in from the field, this can really be a good solution for you as well too. If you don't have a work management system that you like, and that's not working well for you today, we can have that discussion as well. But that's not going to be the focus of the webinar here today. So if you don't already, look for us on your social media of choice. Lots of good content that we share in there, including information about additional webinars. So look for us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. Take a moment and follow us there. That way you see those posts pretty soon after they happen, and you can make sure you're up on the latest and greatest of what we're up to here. I always like to mention this idea of drops to everybody when you attend the webinars here. And again, this is our idea of how do you sort of roll out Sedaru technology in a stepwise approach and think about moving towards being that self-driving automated utility, which is really what the Sedaru mission is about, and really what we're hoping to help utilities and cities achieve. And so that starts with this idea of being digital and real-time, and then using that information to make more optimized decisions, and then moving to a realm where you're doing predictive and preemptive decision making. And really how that applies today, I mean, there are a lot of utilities out there that are using an existing or legacy asset management system that many times they're still using paper in the field, or they've got really limited electronic workflows in the field as well too. And being able to, when you do that, you often fall off. Like, you might be doing some things digitally, but you're going to have a hard time using that data in real time. And what we're doing here on the Sedaru side can really help you change that. So I'm going to do most of this presentation today actually from my iPad. So I'm going to share the screen on my iPad here, and we'll jump into things. And I'll kind of explain where we're going from. And as I said, as you have questions, feel free to go ahead and fire away with those questions, and we'll get all those questions answered for you. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at my iPad running what's called Sedaru Fieldforce, right? And so Sedaru Fieldforce is designed as a field application uh, uh, for your folks that aren't working in the office, right? And I think it's a really interesting, important thing to note. If you think about the number of staff that you have at your utility and the number of users of some of your software tools, what you typically are going to find is that a large number of people don't work in the office, right? That they are out in the field completing work and tasks and activities. And I often mention this to people and get them to think about it, because folks that work in the office tend to be able to figure out just about any kind of computer application you can put in front of them in many ways, right? Whereas your field staff, oftentimes technology is not the first thing that they're looking at and thinking about, and they often represent sort of the least computer literate staff at the utility, but they're also one of your largest, constituencies there. So if you can deploy technology that makes the field folks really successful, then you're really getting somewhere. And again, like I was mentioning before, you really want to think about leveraging existing tools that you have in place, right? When we were, I think it was last week, I guess, when we were doing a webinar talking about meter management, one of the things that I brought up there was integration to CIS systems. And this is one of the things I mean about leveraging back-end systems, right? So you might have a customer information or billing system. One of the things that often happens through there is all your service requests might come through there because they're linked to a customer account and not necessarily to an asset. But then you also have asset-driven work as well too. And in many cases, at many utilities, it might be the same person that's going to have to navigate those customer service requests. That's also going to have to deal with the asset-driven work orders, and then any other sort of things that kind of fall in between there. And what do you do if, let's say, I'm using Munis for my billing system, and I am using Maximo for my for a work order management system, right? Or any kind of combination of those things. One of the things you can do with Sedaru Fieldforce is use that as a unifying piece of technology out in the field, so that your folks in the field, quite frankly, don't have to worry about, well, is this coming from Munis, or is this coming from Maximo, or coming from some other system? They can see everything together in one place and then be able to work with that from there. So let me walk you through. I'll walk you through the interface here, and we can talk about how some of that works here. If you might be a little, this might be a little bit new to you, the Fieldforce interface, or what you're looking at. Even if you're familiar with it, what you're looking at here might be a little bit different, right? So one of the things I'm going to see is you see the little icon in the upper left that says 7, right? So that's indicating existing work orders that have been assigned to me. Traditionally, in the Sedaru Fieldforce interface, you would see work order is assigned per asset across the top. But in this particular setup, you got the ability to have work orders assigned across multiple assets, and so that paradigm of it being linked directly to one asset doesn't really apply. So the tiles across the top, what we actually use that for is to navigate the map. And so I'm going to zoom in on my map here a little bit, and we'll get some of this infrastructure to show up. One of the things that's worth noting in here is everything you're looking at here is all built off of Esri technology, right? So we're a business partner of Esri. We work really closely with them, and how some of Sedaru's gotten developed, and then also from a relationship perspective and working with utilities. So if you're a GIS person, we certainly have a lot in common to talk about here. So one of the things I can do is, let's say I zoom in here and I want to know more information about this hydrant. I just touch on the hydrant tile, and then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to touch on the hydrant. And you see it's going to bring up information about that hydrant. And again, this can be whatever information you want, right? So this just has a couple of fields in here, but I could be displaying lots of information to my field staff. I could be displaying just a few things, right? So right off the bat, I've got a really easy way to just see what's going on. And then if there's existing work orders or history, I'll see that in here, right? And there's not on this particular asset that I chose, but I'll show you some later on that do, but you're getting this in one screen, one map, one app, a view of exactly everything that's going on there. Now, if I wanted to say look at a valve, I'll just touch on this valve tile up here, and then I'll come in and touch on a valve. The reason why that workflow exists, by the way, and it's really intentional, is one of the things we constantly hear from field staff is that if you're trying to use your fingers out in the field to navigate the app and to get information in here, it's easy to accidentally select the wrong thing, or you're tapping really hard, or you're trying to do it. So we have found if you use the tiles across the top, and I can kind of swipe over to the right, and you see there's more than just those 6 that are there. But if I use the tiles at the top as my way to select things and have these big buttons, it works well for the guys with big fingers, and it's easy to go in and kind of select the individual assets or select the items. So same thing, I want to see information about a meter here, I can come in and I can touch on that and do that. So what really, really nice way to be able to just navigate the map, quickly get all of that Esri information that's in your GIS, and to work with that right from there. But let's go back to that work order view that we were looking at. So I'm just going to touch on that 7, the tile in the upper left, and that brings me right into a set of work orders in here. And so we'll take a look at a few of these, right? I'll touch on one of these, and it immediately brings me right to the list, or right to the location of it, so I can see exactly what it is. And now what I'm seeing is actually what is really fairly complex, a whole bunch of information about this particular work. In this case, we're looking at a water distribution system valve maintenance task, right? It says that above the right. And we can kind of go through and look at things here. So here's a summary. So work order summary. Now, if you're familiar with, let's say, like Cityworks or Maximo, right? And it's a little different in each of those applications, right? Cityworks has this concept of work orders, and then they also have what are called inspections, right? And inspections are information about the asset. They also have sort of tasks that can be within the work order as well, too. And Maximo's got a similar setup where you've got the assets, and you've got this thing called a job plan that might be specific subtasks, and then you've got header information, in this work order as well, too. And so Sedaru is built to adapt, to pull all that stuff and information in, except you now, from a training perspective, don't really need to teach your staff, like, well, what's the difference between an inspection and a work order? And how does the job plan tie into this, right? You don't have to, it's a little more intuitive for a field person than it is, the IT folks and the engineers kind of get all that stuff really easily, but sometimes for the field folks, like, hey, I just want to get this work done, right? So in this case, we've got our work order summary here, right? And the summary can have, have information I can fill out in there in terms of the completed date, location, those other pieces in there. And then I can have, where we really get into the meat of things, is a task list that's in here. Now, this is pretty cool in this case, right? So my task list in this case had 10 separate tasks on it, okay, for doing a water distribution valve inspection. And that's because this individual work order here is linked to 10 different assets, 10 different valves that have to be completed here, okay? And so I can see, now that I drill into that, I see the location of all of those individual ones on the map. And so now I can come in, and each one of these, in this case, is an actual Cityworks inspection task, okay? So if you think about how you might have to do that in that, like, Cityworks application, I got to go to this screen, and I got to go to this screen and this screen, and now it's all sort of consolidated in one place, right? So I can put in this information in, I can put my turn information in if I want, is it operable? What's neat here on all this as well, too, is, so like you see this pick list here, that actually doesn't have to get configured in Sedaru, okay? So if I was pulling this in from Maximo or Cityworks or Infor, it's just going to dynamically, using the APIs of those source system, communicate back to that Cityworks or that Maximo system, and is going to inherit that pick list in there automatically. So you're not living in a world where you got to configure 2 different systems and try to keep 2 different things up up to speed in the same place. Okay, so it dynamically does that. So I can come in here and say, yep, it's operable. Did I vac it out? Yes. Was any excavation required? Yes or no? And I can kind of keep scrolling down. So this list can be, as long as I want it to be. And then we'll go ahead and we'll fill in today's date on there. And then I'm going to go, let's see, we'll fill out, what was the reason? We'll say, it was leaking. Now I can come in and say, save it. And you see here, it knows like, okay, do I close the inspection? Yes, that's closed, right? And now what you see is my work order here. Now I've got 3 out of the 10 things in here completed, right? And so what's neat about this, and again, thinking about your workflows, you see one of these valves, one of these was completed in February, another was completed in March, another we just completed now in April, right? And so I've got this ability that I could set up sort of larger blanket kind of work orders, right? And then complete them over time in the field as well too, right? And go through and do each and every one of those little pieces there individually as I want. And then once I've completed all those things, you see here, I've got all my ability to do, time, materials, et cetera, on all of these pieces. I also have the ability, and I'll show you real quick. So let's say if we did want to start entering some time in here, I can put my time in pretty easily. So we'll add that piece in here. I want to say, what equipment is being used in here? So I've got all of my equipment listing in here, but if I wanted to say, start typing something, we'll say I was using one of these trucks that's in here, right? For that task that's in there. As I type, it automatically filters the equipment list down for me. And again, these are all things that your field staff really appreciates, being able to really quickly navigate and do some of those pieces. So we'll touch on one of those and choose that. And we'll put some time in for using that truck in there as well too, and say save. And so we're filling out those things as we go too. And so if I kind of want to quickly go back to my assets in there and I want to drill in, like, so in this case, we had 10 assets associated with this particular one, and I want to see the details about any of those. So now I do that, and I'm pulling directly, again, sort of all that information from the GIS that I might have in there about any one of the assets that are associated with it. I touch on one of it, it brings me to it where I need to find it on the map. And so again, it becomes really, really straightforward to be able to navigate that particular work order or task in there. Let's see, let me show you another example in here. Let's do this hydrant maintenance one here, right? So I touch on, and that one's not as, I was looking for something a little more complicated. Hang on one second, let's find, here we go. Let's do a water line repair, a little more complicated. So water line repair, same kind of thing here. Here I come into my task list, and in this case, we're not looking at multiple assets associated on this task list, right? In this case, we're looking at something that has 2 different steps associated with it. And again, I could have a whole list of different steps associated with it as well too, right? So I could come in and I could have an excavation task and other pieces in here. But in this case, we're just putting a repair clamp, and then, and then there's going to be later on an asphalt repair. And this is set up to be really simple. So instead of doing a really detailed list of everything, I'm just using my finger and I'm checking off tasks and items in there to be able to do that. If I wanted to add other things to it, I hit that little plus sign, and let me just back up. Let me show that real. So you see in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little plus sign. So you can have work order templates that are set up. So it might be, hey, here's the predefined way that we tackle any of these worker activities. But when I get out to the field, there's a bunch of other things that I've got to do in here. And so, I had to go and do some site cleanup, and I am going to add that to there. And you see that now got added to my list of things to do here. While we're there, we're going to do an inspection while we're there as well too. And then when I do that inspection, again, this is a Cityworks specific thing here. When I do that inspection, the inspection's got to get tied back to the asset. So it's making sure I'm saying, yes, that's the asset I want to use, right? And this is something that, you know, the engineers are going to really appreciate, because you're getting that inspection, but it's being directly tied back to that asset, so you can use it for correlating information later on in there. Let's see, let me get this question that just came in as well too. And the question is, you know, could this interface with the inventory management system, with the warehouse? Yeah, so good question, right? So what we're looking, so the question really is, how would this tie into the inventory management system essentially? And so in this particular case, what we're looking at here, this is actually linked to Cityworks. So as soon as I use as soon as I am using that piece of equipment and saving that work order, it's going to go back and be decremented from inventory in whatever way that you've got that set up in Cityworks, right? And to be able to do that. If you're using Sedaru natively, standalone by itself, there's a set of reporting that can be set up for you to be able to sort of use and manage inventory, and to be able to kind of see what was used and to track some of that stuff. But in this case, it's linked back to that source system. So however you're handling that, it can be handled right from here. Another thing that comes up quite a bit in folks ask is, you know, the GIS information and some of this, like, where is that coming from? And typically we're that's being set up so that it's pulling directly from your Esri services. And so this can be on a setup like this, where you're kind of integrating to a Maximo or a Cityworks. We'd also, part of it would be really integrating to Esri portal as well too. So, and again, depending on how your GIS environment's configured and some of those things, there's a couple different approaches, but the idea is all the GIS information I'm looking at here, I'm going to be able to complete right from or be able to look at that latest and greatest information right from in here as well too. So you kind of see there, as I do these pieces, I can add these tasks to it. So it really enables, and this is one of the really tricky things with sometimes using like a Maximo in the field for your field staff, is that their ability to kind of create their own work orders from the field, or to modify a work order on the fly to do more stuff, can be pretty labor intensive with some of the existing tools that are in there. One of the things I can do right from here as well too is I don't need, let me get out of this work order, and we're just going to go ahead and hop out of there. We're not going to close it out. That's the other neat thing here, right? Like, I can go and do work and have my tasks and have all my things in there. I don't need to necessarily close out of the work order right there. It's going to save my progress, have all those pieces in there. Is I can from here create work orders right on the fly as well too, right? So, and I might, and I can create related work orders on something as well too. But to keep it simple, let's just say I'm going to go to one of these meters here. So I'm going to touch on the meter tile, and then I'm going to touch on this individual meter that's right here. And like we were saying before, there's no work order assigned to that individual meter, but I'm going to go in here and I'm going to hit start and say create new work order. And then I'm going to choose on what work order type. And so now I've got all my work order types that have been configured within either my CIS system or Cityworks or Maximo or, you know, Munis, whatever the system is. I've got those available to me in here. And you see, this is a pretty extensive list of things, right? So the ability to support, you know, a really broad program is really easy. And again, this all self-configures. So I could come in and say, hey, we're going to just do a meter leak investigation, for example. And I'm starting that right now. And we'll go ahead and hit save. And that's going to go ahead, back out, and it's going to create that new work order. And automatically here, in this case, there's no specific template behind it, right? So if I come to my task list on here, it's got things that I might want to add to it, right? Because I'm just out here doing an inspection, right? Not necessarily And so I've got a meter maintenance inspection, for example, that's been configured. So maybe I want to do that. Here's the meter I'm working on, apply that. And now that's going to save that back. And now I can go in and fill out all the information about the meter and fill those pieces out in here, right? And some of them are just comments fields, some of them are dates, etc. And I can go in and fill out all of those pieces in there. Let's see, we're getting close to the end of our time here on this. So now's a good time. If you have questions, fire them into that Q&A panel here while I show you kind of show you a few other pieces in here. So here, let me I'm going to hop out of this particular work order. Oh, good question. Can you fill out the form with voice command? Yeah. So I'm doing this on an iPad, so it's just going to use the native tools in the iPad to be able to do that. And so the dictation, tends to work pretty well. That gets better and better. It's a little device specific, so I could be running, excuse me, I could be running this on like a Windows laptop as well too. And so I found that the voice dictation isn't quite as good with some of that, but yeah, that capability certainly exists to do that. Let's see. Oh, what I wanted to do. Let's go back to this meter leak investigation work order. So here's another kind of cool thing is from any one of these other items, I could come in here and do a related work order, right? So I hit the little button on the bottom of the screen here that says, do I want to do a related work order? And so I'm going to say, yep, I want to create a related work order in here. And again, we're back to, a whole long list of additional things that I want to do in here. So this got sent out as a meter investigation. We're going to go and check and do it. But I also know that I want to do an updated read for the billing system and have that in there as well too. And so again, I'm just going to go ahead and add that from here, say save. And as I'm doing this, it's making the API call back to the source system in this case. In this case, Cityworks, and it's going ahead and doing that. And now the same thing, I can add my other task list that I might have for that in there. I can fill out my summary information and kind of go from there. And so all of those pieces are really enabled by the team in the field to be able to complete and do those things. Well, good. I'll see if anybody's got any other questions in here, but that's kind of the summary of how this field application, what the experience looks like for your staff in the field when they're going to use Sedaru again as sort of a front end on a Maximo or Cityworks or some of the Infor products, or like I said, Munis, other sort of CIS billing systems. You've got this ability that within one map and one application, I can work with and see all of my different pieces here. I'll also mention here, like if I swipe to the right, from here I'll see my completed work as well too. So if the field folks can very easily kind of see what's on their work list of things that they have to do, and what they have completed as well too. So there's a lot of flexibility for them to be able to tackle a lot of their work and activities. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. You're going to get a follow-up message from attending the webinar. If you have other questions, feel free to reply to that. We like to reach out and follow up with folks and see if we got all your questions answered. If you've got a larger group at your utility that's interested in taking a deeper dive into some of these things and really getting into the weeds on technical questions, we're happy to do these kind of presentations too as a kind of a private webinar as well too for folks. So we're happy to explore all those with you. We've got another webinar coming up on Thursday. I think we're doing around hydrant maintenance. And then we should have an announcement, I think, going out this week. We're going to do another set of webinars over the next 3 weeks after this as well too. So lots of exciting content to share with you. And we're excited for you to join us and to keep learning more about Sedaru and hopefully helping you out with solving some of your day-to-day problems. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.